everyone, and welcome to Free Thinkers Rising. I am Charlotte Tweed, relocation strategist and founder of Liberty Travel Coach. And today I have with me Francisco Litvay. His business is Settee. And I first heard of Francisco when I was watching a Free Cities conference a couple years ago, and you were speaking at that conference. And I'm excited to have you talk to us today about flag theory and Paraguay residency. So, Francisco, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Thank you, Charlotte. It's a pleasure to be here, of course. So my name is Francisco Litvay. I'm originally from Brazil, relocated in 2017. Since then, I've been in a total of 50 countries as a digital nomad, have residency in three of them, have citizenship in two, have bank accounts in over 12 countries by now, and companies in three jurisdictions as well. And that's basically the gist of flag theory, right? It's precisely about diversifying the different aspects of your life in different jurisdictions so that none of them have full control over you, and you can also make use of the best opportunities that the world has to offer, right? And so this is what I do professionally as well. Settee is my company. We work with international relocation and taxes primarily in South American jurisdictions, right? We also help with planning for other destinations, but mostly Paraguay, Brazil, Uruguay, Colombia, where I am right now, and the other South American countries.
Now, you said you had bank accounts in 12 countries, right?
Yeah, but that's the banking side is a bit easier to do than, let's say, get a second passport, because a lot of countries you can just pull up, go to the bank, and they'll open an account even if you're not a resident. Whereas, to get a citizenship is a process that can take years and years. So the banking flag, if you're traveling around and you have a bit of spare time on your trips, it's something that can be arranged.
Yes, I have bank accounts in 5 countries. So I was wondering with 12, if you find that challenging to manage.
In reality, from these 12 that I have, I don't use most of them, right? So many of them are just as a backup there. There's a lot of
Mhm.
accounts that if you keep, I don't know, $500 there or even less, some accounts you don't even have to keep any balance at all, and they still keep your account active and you don't have to pay any fees. So it's just something that I have as a, if I ever have any need. For example, I have an account in Cape Verde in Africa. Why? Well, I was there for 2 months, so I opened an account. But will am I using it? No. If I ever need to make a transfer to Africa, will it be useful? Yeah, it's there as a plus, but not something that I have to on a day to day actually have to think about and manage. Right? I'll have, like, let's say, three accounts that I use for 80% of my daily life, and then the rest is there just for particular situations.
Mhm. So for someone listening to this who has never heard of flag theory before, and there will be people who have never heard of it before, give us an example of what that could typically look like for the average person. Like you mentioned the banking already in residencies. Are there other areas of flag theory that people could focus on to diversify themselves?
Of course. So for this, it's important we go one step back and into what is flag theory itself, right? Flag theory is, although it has theory in the name, it's actually a very practical concept that every relevant aspect of your life is a flag. And most people will be born in a country, have the citizenship of that country, live in that country, maybe have a company in that country, and they're banking there and their investments there, and they're concentrated. So if anything happens to that country, their life is fully correlated to the future of that one jurisdiction, right? The idea of flag theory is for you to plant these different flags in different jurisdictions around the world. So usually the ones that I just mentioned will be the big movers, right? Your citizenship is what will define a lot of your travel freedom, a lot of your relocation freedom, a lot of your, let's say, personal sovereignty. Your residence is usually what will define where you pay your taxes, except in the case of Americans, which still will have to pay tax to the USA. But for Europeans, Canadians, Australians, Latinos, etc., it will be defined primarily by where you actually have your residence. Then your banking is how you move your money. Your company is how your business is, where it is located, which rules does it have to abide by, which taxes does it have to pay, and then of course also where you locate your capital. So something that would be very popular depends from where we're talking about. For example, for an American, not even necessarily just a US person, but like let's say America more widely, a Canadian, an American, a Brazilian like me, it's very popular, very normal for someone to have, let's say, great grandparents that came from Europe, or some relatives from another country. So the person then gets a citizenship by descent that way, right? Let's say they're born in the US, but they had a German grandpa, and because of that, they get a second passport from Germany that gives them full relocation rights within the European Union. And then they are, let's say, earning a remote income at that point. They don't have to be physically in an office, so they come down to live here in Colombia, where the cost of living is lower, where maybe the weather is more agreeable to them, especially if they're from to up north where it would be very cold. So they maybe spend a season a year in a more tropical environment. If they have, let's say, a business that is in a regulated field that would be hard to operate in their countries of origin, then they take that business to a place that's better suited for it, right? Let's say BVI is super popular for investment funds, or Curacao, which is super popular for gambling operations, or Switzerland, which is super popular for crypto operations. So really depends from case to case, but I would say this is a very typical scenario. A person that maybe married someone from another country, or has a descent, or has some descent from another country, they get two passports that way. Increasingly popular is just buying your way to a second passport as well, right? Getting a citizenship by investment, and then they relocate to somewhere that they enjoy the life more, or they pay less taxes, or they feel more free, right? Because they have less restrictions into what they can or cannot do. And then they structure their financial life also in a way that they don't depend on a single bank closing an account or blocking them from accessing the financial system.
So what would be the first step if someone's assessing their life and they want to start becoming more global? What would be the first step that you would suggest they look at if they want to apply flag theory to their life?
This is very individualized, of course, but that's the first thing, right? I would look at what are the big things that I can already do easily, and just from my current situation. So for example, on the citizenship side, right? um, a lot of people don't even know if they would have a right to another citizenship by descent, because they've not actually never went that far into the family tree or into the documents and so on. So I would always check if there is a easily actionable item that I can take action on first before going for the big thing. So before you look at, let's say, a citizenship by investment, which would cost six figures, I would check, do I have something here? Like, does my wife have a different nationality that we could make use of, or do I have something here that I can use? On the banking side, for example, that's something that, of course, there are some jurisdictions which will be harder to access, right? Like, let's say, opening a bank account in Switzerland is usually going to be 500K plus for the bank to even consider talking to you. But there are many other places where you could, from your couch, open an account fully online. You don't even have to go there. You don't have to make a big deposit or so. So I would analyze what I can do easily, but also what are my goals, right? This is something that you always have to understand, that as value is subjective, also the best solutions will be subjective. There's a tendency sometimes to want to just copy what the friend is doing. Like, oh, like I have a friend who did this or he implemented that, but it's not necessarily the best for you, because maybe you have a different income source, maybe you have a different family structure, maybe you just like different things, right? I have friends, for example, that moved to Paraguay and they love it there, and I have friends who got the residency in Paraguay, but they don't want to live there. They just want to have the residency as a backup, as a plan B, as a compliance document, right? So they can have paperwork somewhere, but they prefer to be digital nomads and live around the world. So it's also very important for the person to map out what is important for them. Is it important for me that I can have something and I don't have to live there, or do I want something where I'll have to live there? Is like for a family that wants to homeschool, the desires are completely different from, let's say, a single guy who just got his first remote job and now he wants to travel the world and see, see what adventures there are out there. So I would also really put some thought on the inside, right? What is it that I really want or that I really value in a place?
So yes, it can apply to anyone, any age group, any demographic, depending on what type of lifestyle you want and what you currently have.
Exactly, exactly. So we see people from all scenarios. So if a European, for example, will move to Latin America for a lower cost of living or less state interference, whereas a Latin American will move to Europe for better jobs or to eventually get a European passport, which is very strong. A retiree will move to a place where he can live well on his retirement, somewhere calm, somewhere maybe by the beach or by the mountains. Um, Whereas, sometimes a family will move for the educational opportunities of their kids. So the most important thing is to understand that there are options for every single person, every profession, every age group. Sometimes some groups will have more options than others, right? We also have to be realistic. So someone that is, let's say, a remote digital marketer, he can be anywhere in the world because he doesn't have the location restriction. Whereas, let's say, a neurosurgeon, right, if he wants to do something, he will be bound by, okay, which countries can I actually practice in, right? Maybe I'll have to do a recognition of my diploma abroad or something like this. So there are options for everyone, some easier than others, but there's always something that can be done.
Yes. And my husband and I are looking, well, we are applying flag theory to our life as we put our plan in place. We're Canadian citizens. My great grandfather was Polish. My husband's grandma came from Belgium. So, we've looked at different things. What could we possibly do? What other citizenships could we get? We just became permanent residents in Mexico, so we just qualified for that. So
Oh,
our idea is kind of 6, 4, and 2. 6 months as our base, have a base somewhere where we can have our stuff and go out of. 4 months, if that's spending time in Canada with our family or another place we absolutely love being, and then 2 months traveling and volunteering. That's kind of what we want to apply. So we're getting the stages there. We're just now trying to figure out where exactly we want our base to be because things have changed in Mexico. It's changed quite a bit in the last couple of years since we got our temporary residency. So we're looking at other options. And that's why it's so important to have another residency or another citizenship so you can go somewhere and stay.
that framework you just mentioned is I would say is getting increasingly popular, right? Having maybe two bases or three bases where people spend their time. I'm in Medellin right now in Colombia, and I can tell you how many people use this as a base, but not as a fully permanent one. So where they come here and they spend 3 to 6 months a year, and then the rest they spend back in the U.S. or in Europe or in Argentina. Doesn't matter, but that allows you to have, let's say, the best of both worlds, right? Where you can be, let's say, in Europe for the summer, which is awesome, and then in winter you're here, or when there's big events, or this flexibility that a lot of people now have because of remote sources of income allows one to really enjoy the best of places and avoid the worst of places.
So something I've been hearing a lot here with Mexico, like I said, things have changed a lot here. I hear a lot of residents that are looking to expand their option for different residencies. And Paraguay is a country that I am hearing come up a lot for their freedom mindset and ease of residency. So let's talk more about Paraguay and their residency program.
For sure. So Paraguay is actually at our company currently the most popular residency of all. Of course, we also work a lot with Brazilians, so it's a neighboring country. In that case, there's a geographic component, but we're seeing a lot of demand from every side. And in fact, Paraguay has seen as well because there's been an increase of over 50% in the amount of residencies processed year over year from the last year. And last year was already a year of growth related to the previous year. So the country has been seeing, record levels of immigration the last few years in a row. What makes Paraguay special? So when it comes to flag theory, Paraguay joins a lot of characteristics that you usually won't find in a single country. So, first of all, it's an easy residence to obtain. You don't have to prove income. You don't have to make an investment. You don't have to be retired. You don't have to make a bank deposit. All of these other things that you have to do in countries, even Mexico, right? You have to either prove income or buy a property or prove savings. None of this in Paraguay. So the entry barrier is very low. It's also a country that has a territorial tax system, meaning that foreign sourced incomes are tax free and only locally sourced incomes are taxed. But even the locally sourced incomes are only taxed up to 10% at a max. So, for example, dividends are taxed at 8, rentals are taxed at 5, and other local incomes can get up to 10%. So, even if the person is doing a business there or is investing in the country, the taxes are very low. But mostly people get it because of the foreign income exemption if they already have a business abroad, or if they already have investments, if they have um, stocks that they want to liquidate and have zero capital gains tax, or doesn't really matter. But foreign sourced incomes are tax free in this country. Then we also have a low minimum presence requirement to keep the residents active, and this is a big one. So a lot of people don't want, for example, to have to be in a country to for 6 months of the year, like currently you have in Argentina, right? If you want to keep Argentinian residents, you do have to be there over half the year, otherwise they'll not renew it. They won't convert it to permanent. You won't be able to get citizenship. So some people want more flexibility. Paraguay only makes you be there 1 day a year during the temporary residency phase, which is the first 2 years. And then once you obtain the permanent residency, it's 1 day every 3 years that you have to be in the country to keep your residency documentation active, which is very generous. It's not as
Mhm.
generous as Mexico, which once you are a PR, you just don't have to come back ever. But once every 3 years is still better than Dubai. It's better than Cyprus. It's better than Malta. It's better than Portugal. It's better than Brazil. It's better than most countries out there. Then we also have the other point, which is the ease of getting the tax residency. And this is an important distinction that we have to make because we talk residency, but there's a difference between legal residency and tax residency. So, legal residency is the right to live in that country, right? When you get a residence permit, and then with that permit, you can get an ID card, you can get a driver's license, you can get a bank accounts as a local. You can structure life and live in that country if you want. That's what a residence permit is. And then there is the tax residency, which is the obligation to pay tax in a given country. Now, in some cases, you want to have that tax residency, that obligation to pay tax, so you can show it to other financial institutions or countries, right? A place like Spain, for example, or a place like Canada, to let their citizens move out, they'll want to see a tax certificate a lot of the time, right? They can come back asking, "Have you really moved out? Do you now have your center of life abroad? Did you really start, becoming a tax resident somewhere else?" So this is a for some countries, it's an absolute deal breaker to be able to get a tax certificate or not. For others, there's not really a big deal, right? For Germany or for Brazil, when Brazilians, when they're moving out, they don't really have to show a tax certificate like 90% of the time. But for other people, it's very important. In Paraguay, once you have your tax number active, you can immediately request a tax certificate. This is in contrast to what most countries in the world use, which is 183 days on the ground, or having what's called your center of life in that country. So usually it will be, oh, if I have a property there, that's where I'm living, it's my residential property, then I can get a tax certificate. Or if I make a big investment in the country, then I can get a tax certificate. There, usually that's how you have it, right? In Paraguay, you don't even have to be there a month a year. You can just go make sure your legal residency is up, activate your tax number, and you can immediately request a tax certificate. So that's what makes Paraguay very special. We have low barrier to entry, low presence requirement to maintain, territorial taxation, and an easy tax certificate. You usually will find maybe two, at max three in a given country, but you seldom find all four.
Yeah, that's pretty incredible. So what about citizenship? I have heard that it's challenging to get citizenship though, but if you have the permanent residency, that may not be necessary.
Exactly. So the permanent residency is valid for 10 years. So you only have to renew it every decade. And the citizenship, however, is a much more convoluted process. And I would say it's the one of the worst citizenship processes in the region because Brazil and Uruguay and Argentina, all of them process citizenships faster with less bureaucracy than Paraguay, right? So Paraguay would be 3 years of permanent residency you can apply, but then the citizenship itself is, so your application is going to be signed by every single Supreme Court minister. So like the paper has to get to all the judges there, and this takes years. So it's a citizenship process that can take 3 years or 4 years to even get through. And of course, you need to also show ties to the country, right? It's not going to work if you only have it as a plan B, as a compliance document, but not a real place where you're living in. So if you want to aim for citizenship in Paraguay, you should be there at least 6 months a year. You should be declaring some taxes. You should have other ties to the community, to the country. You should ideally maybe have a business, or you have a kid there, or you have a wife there, or you bought some property. But just oh, I got a residency. I'm here every 3 years just to keep it active. They're not going to give you a citizenship. But the good thing is, all of the nearby neighbors are more efficient when it comes to citizenship, and they can also be faster, right? So, for example, Brazil, if you have a kid there or you marry a Brazilian, you can apply for citizenship in just 1 year, which is the fastest in the entire continent. And it's a really good passport, too. Same thing, Uruguay, 3 years of residence. If you're married, not even to a Uruguayan, if you're just married overall, you can apply in 3 years. So there's good options in the region if citizenship is your main goal. Ah, and there's one thing. There's one group for which Paraguay is usually not the best residency, or not the best, but like one of the best cost benefit residencies, which is to the people who have passports that don't allow you to enter Paraguay visa free. So that's an important thing. If you who are listening to this right now, if you are an Indian, if you're an African, if you are from most of the Arabic countries, the process is going to be much harder for you because Paraguay, the application is done in person, right? It's not like Chile or Colombia or Brazil where you can initiate the application remotely. You have to first apply for a visa to be able to enter the country. And Paraguay, because it's a small nation after all, has very few consulates. Right, there's not many options out there. They're not too responsive with the consulates either. It's not like the fastest customer service, so to say. And to enter, you also need an invitation letter from someone who is a Paraguayan resident who will be basically putting themselves on the line. They'll be held responsible for any activities that you do in the country. So this becomes already a much slower and bureaucratic process for these kinds of people, right? Because you can't just go there and apply. It's going to be a months long process usually to be able to get this tourist visa. Not impossible, right? We've had clients, for example, Syrian client or from other nationalities that have gotten residency in the country, but it's not going to be as simple as for everyone else, right? So because of this, it can make sense to consider other options that would be easier for you instead.
But for Canadians and Americans, we don't need a visa. You get your paperwork in line, fly down to Paraguay, apply for your residency. There's no minimum investment. You don't have to put money into a bank account. You only have to spend 1 day a year, did you say, in the country? And
Yes.
to maintain your temporary, which is for 2 years. Then you can move that over into permanent residency, which is good for 10.
Yes. So there is one other option, which is the investor visa if the person wants to get immediate permanent residency. That's possible as well. So if they don't want to do the temporary part, they just want to skip straight to permanent, there's a few options. So you can invest in a 70,000 in a local business, hiring at least five Paraguayans, or you can invest 150,000 in a touristic business in the country, so in the tourism industry, or you can invest 200,000 in financial instruments like stocks or bonds, etc. Or you can invest 200,000 in property. So if the person is already thinking of joining two flags, right? I want to invest in a different country that's not correlated to where I'm from, and I want to get residency, you can join the two and get an immediate PR. But that's not a necessity. It's if you prefer it that way.
Well, thank you, Francisco. That clears up a lot from what I've been hearing. That all makes sense and sounds like a great option for sure. As we wrap up our talk, is there something I should have asked you that I didn't?
I'll just make one note on Paraguay. There's been one annoying development, which is the crypto side, right? Paraguay introduced some regulations pertaining to crypto. So if you're moving over $5,000 of crypto in a year, you then have to declare the transactions, the coins, where you sent it to, how much gains you had, etc. They from the text, they basically copied the regulation from Brazil, but the thing is, Brazil was not a good example to copy it from because it's a very invasive regulation when it comes to privacy. So that's something to keep in mind if you're invested in crypto. However, because they don't have regulations on foreign companies, it's still possible to maintain that same level of privacy as before if you just integrate your crypto into a company. So just to say that if you saw headlines about crypto declaration or taxation in Paraguay, it's yes, it's something that is also being considered. That they're considering undoing it. There's been some news about it, but in the meantime, it's still possible to not have to declare anything if your cryptos are integrated into an investment holding company. So again, joining multiple flags, you incorporate a company outside of Paraguay, and then that company doesn't have to present all its crypto dealings to Paraguay. So I'll add that as a note right there.
Thank you for bringing that up because that is a recent change that just happened. So, yeah.
Exactly.
So aside from the step that you mentioned at the beginning, this is something I've been asking everyone. What is one actionable step that someone could take today to start flag theory and reclaim control?
Map out every aspect of your life that does not necessarily have to be in the country where you're from. So we mentioned a few here, but there's in theory infinite flags because every aspect of your life that you see that could be better served by a different jurisdiction could be a flag. So maybe if you have a website, where in which servers is your data being hosted, right? Are you in a country that has some good data privacy or some laws that will protect you for freedom of speech, maybe, right? A country that's going to uphold your freedom of speech versus others that will, oh, anything, they're just going to take out everything you have there. Or maybe if you have some work that you want to make more international, right? Oh, I have a website that is working really well in English. Maybe I could make this in Spanish or in, like, niche down to another place, and then get someone from a different country to work with me on this. Or maybe your phone number, or getting international insurance, or really, like, when you stop to think about it, there are so many things in our life that we just take for granted that it's just like, oh, here's where I am. But if you start to map out, there's a lot of surface area in your life that you could either reduce the cost or increase the benefits or increase your flexibility if you start looking abroad. So I would note that down. Like even something like medical tourism, right? That's an example of flag theory. I want to get treated in a country that maybe I'll have the same quality of service for a much lower price or at a much faster speed. That's also something you can do on your life that doesn't take years and years of planning, like getting a citizenship, as we just discussed.
And birthing tourism, having your baby in another country. That could be another one as well.
Yes, here I must pitch my home country again. Brazil uh, has a passport that allows you to enter the UK, allows you to enter Europe, allows you to enter all of Latin America, most of Asia, Africa, Russia, everything. It's really just like US and Canada that we don't have visa-free access to. Still, gives you relocation freedom in all of South America. In through Mercosur, you can get very easy residencies in all of South America. In the Portuguese speaking countries as well, you have some additional rights like Portugal, like Cape Verde, etc. And it's a single year living there if you have a child in Brazil. So if you want to give birth abroad, I think that's a fantastic option. If not, there's other options as well: Panama, Costa Rica, Mexico, etc. But Brazil, I think, is a great cost benefit in this moment.
Well, Francisco, this has been very informative. Thank you. If people want to find out more about you, your business, where should they go?
They can go to Settee.io. That's two T's and two E's. They can also, so we're at Settee.io in all social media. My personal socials are at friend Litvay, everywhere: Instagram, LinkedIn, etc. And we have, so most of our content is in Portuguese, but we have a page in English. That's the same team behind it. Everything, we just marketing and doing the content for an English speaking audience, which is called South America Hub. I'll send you the links later for the description here.
Great. Yes, I'll put them in the description. Well, thanks again, Francisco. This has been great.
Thank you, Charlotte. It was an honor, and hope everyone who watched enjoyed it.